Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ. I've got two guests, and this is the first time I'm recording two guests for you on our podcast. And it's some good friends of mine, Amir Morshed and Martin Adams from Propel International. And I'm super excited that both as business psychologists and occupational psychologists that have been in this space for quite some time are going to share some amazing insights and about their own business too, all of the challenges and things that they've developed. So I'm going to hand over to start with Amir, just to give a little sense of your background, because we got to know each other late last year and then spent a bit of time in February. And I can't wait to share your knowledge and insight. So give us a bit of background.
Thank you, Ross. It's a great pleasure to be on your podcast. It's the first time that Martin and myself are doing a podcast together as well. So we're both excited, apprehensive, so a mixture of emotions, but overall very positive. Thanks for having us. So in terms of myself, as you said, I'm a business psychologist. That's the only thing I've ever learned throughout the last 15 years. And that's where I see my calling as well, because my drive is to understand people, to be able to help them. And that's why kind of all the actions have that as a fundament. And that's what I kind of oriented the business as well alongside.
That's really great, Amir. And as both, two co-founders in a business, Martin, give us a little bit of your background and also maybe how you two met.
Yeah, sure, Ross. Again, thanks for the opportunity. And look, it's two for the price of one with Amir and I, where we come together. A little bit about me and my background. I was really, really fortunate. I think in my early 20s, I had a phenomenal lecturer around the occupational psychology space, which completely sent my career choices off in a different direction. So I feel very fortunate for that. And I never really looked back. So like Amir, occupational psychologist, I kicked off my career with a firm called SHL, one of the biggest psychometric firms in the world. Had an amazing experience as a graduate psychologist with the team in New Zealand. Then I kind of flew the coop in a way. So I left New Zealand, where I'm from originally, ended up in the UK. I was based up in Edinburgh for about 5 years and eventually ended up back in house with SHL in the UK, and again had a phenomenal time there. And that's where Amir and I first crossed paths. I think, Amir, it was somewhere in the Midlands on a development centre program. It seems a long, long time ago now. And we worked closely together. Despite being in different teams, we're very aligned in our values and what we wanted to do next. So come 2010, as we were going throughout the year, really our ideas, our thoughts started to align. We thought, hey, let's go out together and kick something off. And that's what became Propel. And now we're sort of coming up on 10 years of Propel. That time has gone by in a blink.
I bet, the first 10 years of my first business, it was a real roller coaster. And I remember, getting to that point and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, gave me a little crystal engraved piece to go on my desk of a congratulations for 10 years. And it was a real milestone, but also a reflection point for me in terms of, what I'd accomplished, but more to the point of what did I want to do next? What was the opportunities that I wanted to create? What did I want to leave behind, and what did I want to take forward? And so that 10 years is a really interesting part. In terms of the vision you had, if you think back to 2010, and Amir, perhaps that will be helpful if you start off, that you met Martin, you were working in the same environment, consultants at SHL, and as Martin explained, had values alignment. But what was the vision at the time that you had? What was the real kind of aspirations and problems you were looking to solve in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I met Martin at SHL, right from the outset, the chemistry was right. I really felt connected to his values. And in terms of the company that we took, we were very much aligned in terms of what we wanted to achieve. Both of us felt that there is space for a talent management consultancy that is very agile, that is very user-friendly, and as well client-centric. So agile in a way that we felt that the larger organizations become, they lose that element of flexibility on occasion, that they can't scale up and downwards as easily as smaller entities. So our challenge is, how can we grow an organization and keep that element of agility? And one way was talking through the network of associates. So kind of 80% of our business is done through freelancers, independent consultants, one man or one woman bands, and how to bring them all together, give them work when there is a project that will allow us to select the best people for each individual project across the globe, whereas we can scale it upwards and downwards more easily and keep it very flexible. And because both Martin and I, we worked for 5 different consultancies across both of us, so we had already a wide network. And it fit in with our personal style as well, in terms of wanting to work with a number of different people across the world and staying connected with them. So that was one of the elements that was very important to us.
And Martin, remember back then, 2010, you'd got this view of this very agile, responsive organization that could scale according to the projects, allow you to use best-in-class associates as you went through. Who was your first client? What was that? Tell us that story.
That's an interesting story. So at the time, at the beginning, Amir and I did a lot of subcontracted work, but I think our first key success case was with Ocean Coca-Cola. So at the time, it was pre-acquisition, so Coca-Cola had not yet acquired Ocean. Yeah, and it was an interesting meeting for Amir and I. I think it was one of our first client meetings in Dubai. We didn't have business cards. Amir, if I remember correctly, I think we were late. So, you know, not the greatest start to a meeting. But, you know, met with a wonderful HR director at the time of this organization, and struck up that rapport. I think he forgave our tardiness, which is certainly not something we aspire to, but it was the reality of that day. He sort of joked about our lack of preparedness on business cards, but I think he also saw that entrepreneurial spirit at the same time. And it really just snowballed from there. You know, we got given a great opportunity that built our confidence, built our reputation. But I think what the clients saw in us at that point was really the entrepreneurial spirit and the kind of the innovation mindset that Amir refers to.
It's interesting, isn't it, when things go wrong, and there's often difficult situations we find ourselves in, sometimes by some bad choices of ourselves, other times by just, that's the matter of the way the world works. And maybe they saw, you call it entrepreneurial spirit or, your characteristics, but how you then showed up when things were not perhaps as planned, no business cards, bit late, all of those things. It maybe gave you an opportunity to show some different skills and some different ways in which you took responsibility of a situation that they then said, maybe these are the guys that can help us. In terms of, when you are helping clients and helping organizations in their talent areas, could you give us an idea of what are you seeing as perhaps the skills and the types of roles and responsibilities that maybe have always been important over those 10 years, or are there any that have become more important now? And perhaps, Martin, if you can continue the flow thinking about that from a team and employees perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points there. So from a people and team perspective, I think what's really been an ingredient of success for us is kind of the family feel, the clan-based nature of Propel. We've got colleagues all over the world. Our head office is based in Dubai, but when we have our sort of global team get-togethers, it feels very much as a family and a clan. And I think clients really, really see that and attach to it. It's not uncommon for people to want to come and work for us, having been clients before, and which is encouraging and a nice sign. But actually getting that direct feedback from clients that they really see that family feel and the tribe nature of what we are as Propel. The other piece, I think, is the technology and the digital fluency of what we are as a business. That particularly when we started off, the talent assessment and development space was getting a bit stale and stagnant. There wasn't that much innovation. Thankfully, things have moved on a lot since then. We're seeing some fantastic innovations come out in the market. In some cases, the pendulum has shifted too far in one direction, and perhaps quality is not being met, or the rigor and the assessment robustness that we really connect to, we're not seeing in some solutions. But we are then seeing that pendulum start to come back to the middle. So not going back to sort of old school or too traditional, but finding that happy medium. And that's something I think clients see in us and value too, that we've got the flexibility for perhaps those who have that curiosity, the drive to experiment. We can push the boat out and do quite new and innovative things. But at the same time, we can dial it back a bit and do something that's perhaps more traditional in focus.
And Amir, what's your thoughts on that in terms of perhaps the skills that you're seeing your clients are looking for? And has that changed at all over the 10 years?
I would say in terms of selecting us as a partner, I would add doing business with integrity. So not over-promising, staying true and close to our areas of expertise. So our areas of expertise are the assessment piece and the development piece. Now, that encompasses as well the engagement piece, the coaching, leadership development, and the heuristic assessment through psychometrics and so on. We haven't ventured much outside of it. So even if a client would come to us and ask us for anything that is related to the talent management cycle, but not necessarily to assessment or development, we try to focus on that. So that's one element, I would say. And as well, us getting along with clients, because we genuinely care about their businesses. We genuinely are intrigued about what's going on. So when I go into a client meeting, I want to find out more. I want to learn for myself. I'm very nosy myself. So I ask questions and I just listen and want to understand, and then draft solutions together rather than me thinking I'm an expert who has all the answers, because many times our client counterparts are at least as experienced as ourselves. So it's about co-creation and co-elevation as well.
It's a lovely term.
I learned it from you, Ross and Mike, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, Mike and I very much felt that. We had the privilege of coming out to see you in February. And one of the highlights was just hanging out with the team over a lunch, and you kindly got in, vegan food for Mike and I, which was awesome. But that everybody just, you described it, Martin, as a family. I think it was perhaps even more than that, in terms of sometimes families don't function very well, right? They're full of people that are, prickly and you have arguments with them. And I just got this sense of a well-functioning sports team of where everyone's got each other's back, and knew what the, unique capabilities of each one was, and was proud of that. They all had pride in each other that was just wonderful to see. And it leads me on to another kind of thing that I'd like to understand from you in terms of, as leaders in your business, has your roles evolved over those 10 years, from founders to now running a business that is in multiple countries with multiple clients and has scaled tremendously over those years? How's that shift gone for you, from consultants to business owners to leading teams and things like that? Perhaps, Martin, give us a bit of your insights as to your experience of that.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I think, it was, Amir and I describe it. We started off as sort of Amir and Martin.com. It was just the two of us. And then it rapidly grew, and then it sort of exponentially grew. So suddenly we're finding ourselves with, magnitudes more people around the world. Really, we've got an incredibly diverse team, diverse ways of thinking, diverse ideas, which is great. The impact that's had on us and our roles is, particularly over the last couple of years, whether, I'd say the exponential growth has occurred, is really learning to let go and get the definition of roles. So, for instance, whilst Amir and I are very similar in our values and the way we approach the business, we've got quite complementary strengths. So it's playing to those, recognizing them. So rather than Amir and I overlapping, we've recognized what those are. So, Amir's got an exceptional strength as a coach, as a manager of people, about the motivational side. For me, it's putting myself more into the technology, the product development, the architecting of solutions, and sort of having the openness to sort of be a bit vulnerable and recognize that, I'm not so great in one particular area, but I'm very fortunate to have a partner in Amir that can complement that, and vice versa. So I think over the last couple of years in particular, and more so as we've gone more global, it's really helped us crystallize and recognize how do we best define our leadership roles to give the business and our people, ultimately, and our clients, what they need.
And before, Amir, I get some of your thoughts. What's your thoughts, Martin, in terms of managers and leaders and the dynamic between those two things, and the sort of not theoretical parts of the differences between them, or whether they're merging more, and situational leadership being important for you? Where do you feel the balance has been in Propel between your own leadership and leading the organization and inspiring visions versus then managing, people, business, clients? What are some of the maybe things you've learned over that period that maybe some of our listeners could benefit from understanding, that journey you've been on of perhaps being both of those things at different points? What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, again, at the risk of repeating, I think part of it is letting go in order for us to build up that capability. It's being able to step back. It's very, as a small business and your own business, it's like your child, it's your baby. So, that's been quite a journey of learning to let go. When you look at, as we've built up, a really solid team of directors across the world, is building that trust, looking at the elements of what actually makes a leadership team work well, because you're working at a peer level in a way, and you've got great minds, great leadership capabilities. So it's adjusting and adapting to that. And you ask about sort of the managerial to leadership leap, and it's an interesting one, particularly in these times. It's very blurred lines. You can talk about business leaders who ultimately in some way should be some kind of people manager if they're on that managerial path. But ultimately, more and more, we're seeing manager as leader. They must be providing that vision. They must be providing that purpose. They must be providing that identity, particularly now and amongst so much ambiguity. And it's not just the situation. For now, there is always uncertainty. And we're seeing more and more managers move away from task management into, for me, what I see as a leader. It's just a leader at a particular level in the organization. And we've gone through that journey ourselves. And particularly at this point, it's made us reflect again on what kind of leadership and people management style is going to be beneficial right now. And the silver lining in this situation is it's out of necessity. The world is shifting, and so you have to adapt. And it's, somewhat frightening, but I'd say mostly exciting, because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel as well.
I guess some of that is partly mindset as well, right? Of how you see the future. And if you still see a future, then, you do what's necessary in order to optimize that. Amir, what's your thoughts on any of that around leadership, and maybe some of your experiences?
Yeah, I think I would like to take the angle of thinking about the ideal partner as well as a leader. And I think one element I've been very lucky with is to have Martin as a partner, as a business partner over the last 10 years, because one of the elements that has made us, I believe, successful is to always look towards the future, to not dwell too much on a problem or try to personalize a problem. Because when we started, I remember on some occasions, I might have been underpricing a proposal, for example, and we put in a lot of hard work in to keep the client happy, but the outcome might have been lower. But there was never a point where there was like finger pointing, or there was like thinking about why did that happen? The question was more, how can we prevent that in the future? And the focus was on us. The focus was on the partnership, the business. And I think that has allowed us to be constructive in any different type of environment and have that constructive dialogue. That's, for me, in terms of a leader as a partner, has been quintessential. So that has been priceless.
In terms of all the different challenges you've helped clients through in the phases of the last 10 years, clients that have been in exceptional growth, and looking to acquire masses amount of talent and reaching out to you to help filter, find, and develop them. What are perhaps, Amir, one of your favorite challenges that you worked on for a client? And take us through the story of what it was, what they were facing. Was it to try and avoid burnouts? Was it mental health issues, or was it growth because a business was growing? Perhaps just pick a client that you were really proud of, a challenge you helped them overcome, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, for me, the projects where I feel that the counterparts are as passionate as I am, that's for me a big win. And I remember one project with a large insurance company. It was about identifying high potentials and helping them accelerate their learning and growth to reach kind of their full potential as quickly as possible. So the elements that I really enjoyed was that the positive thinking, the positive building for that future, being involved as a consultant, not only in the identification and the assessment piece, but as well then continuing that journey. So it was a longitudinal program. So in the first year, selection and assessment, bringing them on board. Then in the second year, focusing on more general developmental areas. And the third year, more targeted, focused, niche development areas that were more kind of tailored to the individuals. So kind of that longitudinal journey, that gives me very much fulfillment rather than consultancy as a point solution.
It's great. Martin, perhaps you could share a story of a client challenge that you really enjoyed helping support them, and what kind of some of those outcomes. And maybe to round it off, because I know you're exceptionally good at taking in information and then looking at how solutions come out. So in that client story, how might somebody who's listening to this be able to benefit or think differently? What advice might you be able to take from that story and that experience?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind, and there's multiple, really highlight moments, but one that comes to mind right now, and I think is, I really value this, and this is so important to me, is, a lot of what we do is about assessment, and, assessment can sound sort of, quite clinical in a way, quite humanless, but seeing it applied so well for the purpose it's intended. And a lot of the work we do will, just by nature of investment and budgets, be more at senior levels. But this particular organization, they started running sort of talent identification at lower levels. And what they were doing is really finding some hidden gems further down. So it was to be able to, again, to Amir's earlier point, co-create a solution that was scalable, because there were big volumes of people, but it worked, it identified, but the participants really enjoyed as well. And then, to learn 2 or 3 years later that some people have come out and they're on this amazingly accelerated career path. they're, leaps and bounds ahead because they were a little bit invisible before. And, this was a massive organization. So this hidden gems element is brilliant. And you see it, they sort of sift through the talent, they find these people, and then to see what these people accomplish, 2, 3, 5 years later, that's pretty incredible. So to your question on, what message out to, businesses, often we focus on too narrow a run. It's find a way of identifying, nurturing and growing that talent at lower levels or throughout different streams of the business. Because for sure there will be, the invisible gems that you just haven't found yet. And that's an exciting thing to discover.
I love that term, how might we find the invisible gems? So if we could think about that from two lenses. So there might be some people who think, I'm an invisible gem. How do I get found? Right? I might be inside a team, or I might be currently on furlough, or, I've found myself in a environment that has perhaps not been of my own endeavor, but I feel like I'm an invisible gem. How could I be found? And I'd like one of you to answer that question. And then the second one is, I'm a HR leader and I'm looking for those invisible gems. What tips and what insights or perhaps processes or activities would you advise to help me find those invisible gems? So just those two aspects from I am one, what would you advise me to get found? And I'm looking for one, what would you advise to help me find them? Who would like to go with which one of those?
Shall I take the first one, Amir? You take the second?
Sure.
Go for it.
So, in terms of individuals who are these hidden gems waiting to be discovered, what I'd recommend strongly is look into the concept of the protein career, the boundaryless career, and adapting this career mindset. There's, terms around it being CEO or captain of your own career, and this is so important. And the core of that is starting with your self-awareness, is really deeply understanding and taking the steps to understand what is it that defines me, what is my identity, what are the strengths I bring to the table. It's also about careful curation of your career network and your career stakeholders as well. So identify who are the people out there, and it's both in work and outside in your family and friends. How can you leverage that to understand and uncover some of the opportunities and create the right channels and connections to get more visible? And a lot of it comes down to self-belief as well. It's the sense of self-efficacy, the sense of career self-management, career self-control. But it requires effort. It requires those invisible gems to be proactive. Perhaps compensate for skills that don't come naturally to them. Perhaps if they're on the more introverted side, what are the things they can do rather than perhaps passively letting results speak for themselves? What can they do to be their own advocates or get advocacy and sponsorship through others? A lot of it comes down to visibility. Those are the key points that come to mind. Amir, is there anything you would add?
Just before you do, Amir, sorry, I want to pick up on something that you said there that was quite subtle and made me smile, because this concept that you said to start with, an invisible gem. Well, the opposite of that is being visible, right? So it's still a gem, and getting that self-awareness that you are one, and then looking for routes of how do I become visible? Who's in my network? Who can I use that could become an advocate of my own, even if I might find it difficult to be one of myself? So I just liked that concept, and I wanted to capture it for our listeners before we went somewhere else. So yeah, sorry, Amir, what's your thought to add on to that, and then maybe from the aspect of how to find them?
Yeah, to piggyback on what you just said, Ross, and what Martin said, I think it's very important that you become the CEO of your own career and make yourself as visible as possible. There's a lot of research and studies around the difference between somebody who's successful at work and somebody who's effective at work. And the major difference is how much you spend time on networking versus on other tasks. So if your time is spent around even going around the office or virtual office, connecting with people, if you spend 30 to 50% of your time on that, you're likely to be more successful. Now, I'm not condoning that, but that's the reality of it, that network is so important for you to become visible, because the more people you're in touch with, the more likelihood is it that you'll be seen. In terms of businesses, how they can kind of make those invisible gems visible, I give you one example from a project that I think might show it a little bit. It was a multinational company, large one, that was looking to select the best people, MBA students from Ivy League universities. So that was kind of their brief to us, and because they wanted to really have the best of the best. Now, we did that program for 2 years, but then my challenge or my thinking was always, why narrow that net so much only to MBA students from Ivy League universities? Because the main question is, what do businesses define as a gem? So their definition of a gem was more widespread than just the Ivy League students from universities. So for me, even the challenge, do they need to have a degree? If we're looking for pure soft skills that will allow you to be successful in company X, then let's focus on the target behaviors, competencies, the capability, character, and commitment of those people, and throw in the net as wide as possible so you can identify the invisible gems rather than restricting yourself.
I love that. And a couple of important parts in terms of the definition of what a gem is. Owning that and communicating it with clarity is important for both sides. And also something that sprung to mind, and it's from a previous conversation I had in a podcast. And when we are looking to be more visible and networking, being intentional about how we show up, and showing up to be a hero and in service is far more effective than showing up to say, look what I've done. And I think that goes a long way when someone shows up to say, how can I help you? How can I serve you? And that then instantly gives an opportunity to become visible rather than just here, look at this table that ranks myself of how great I am. That might make people a little uncomfortable. So in terms of, to wrap up in the last sort of few minutes, I want to cover two parts. One part is, what's your vision for Propel moving forwards? So we've had this kind of story of the two of you meeting, building a business grounded in your values and mindset, built a team now that is doing amazing work with the clients. What does the next 5 years or 10 years look like? And what are you crafting and working on? And then I'll surprise you with the final question after we've done that. So Martin, what's your vision for Propel looking forwards?
Yeah, and it's a very timely question. Again, whilst we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary and we're thinking, well, great achievement, we've been catapulted into what is really a fantastic opportunity to reflect and prioritize what we want to focus on next. And without a doubt, the technology enablement is something we've always done, but we will be accelerating. So for us, it's really focusing on how do we help organizations through more automated processes, but not neglecting the human element. That's so important to us. So whilst we're adopting a technology first strategy, it's all in aid of supporting the advisory, the process, the people side. For us, there's that triumvirate of people, process, technology. You have to get all elements in there. And I'd say what we're doing is balancing those out more. So as we come into the next 10 years, it's how do we find ways to do what I'd call ethical automation, ethical efficiencies, doing assessment with integrity, helping organizations, grow talent, select talent, succession plan, whatever it might be, in ways that work, and having the right technology tools in place to facilitate that, but not replace the human elements.
I like that. I'm a firm believer in the augmentation rather than the replacement. And we've been doing it for years, right? We create these technologies. One might have been, rubbing two sticks together to get fire, and that was a technology that then allowed us to do loads of things. Technology has always enabled us to do something, but it's inert until we give it a purpose. And so giving it a purpose that works in harmony is a lovely vision that you've just shared. Amir, want to add anything else to the vision for Propel? Perhaps in 10 years' time, what might it look like? What's your wildest dreams of that?
Yeah, I think in terms of aspirations, I would always want Propel to be able to identify and address the genuine needs of the people within business and the businesses themselves. And for that, I think we always need to leave the door open for re-identification, renovation, and kind of thinking about how we can best adapt to those needs in a given moment. Like, for example, if at the moment resilience and mental health become bigger issues, how can we address those true pain points as well? So I think a Propel in the future will have the same heart as right now, but in terms of how it corresponds with the world, how it addresses the world, that should be as realistic, as real as the world in 10 years is. However the world in 10 years might look like, which I think right now it's as uncertain as ever before.
Love it. And the final bit, just to wrap us up, is you have a choice between a book or a film. And the second choice is then either the one you're reading or viewed most recently, or the one that's had the biggest impact on you. So are you reading a book right now? What is it? And do you want to share it? Or what book has influenced you the most over your period? And the same if that's a movie or film for you. And Martin, share either a book or a film that is of something that might be interesting.
Yeah, the timely question. I'm kind of done with films and TV right now. I've watched far too much in the last few weeks, and I feel very lucky to have this opportunity to get back into to fiction. And the book I'm reading at the moment, coincidentally, has a TV series on it too, on Amazon Prime, I think. But it's called American Gods, and it's exceptionally well written. It's very poetic in style, and to be frank, I don't want to say I've not had the time. I've not made the time to get into fiction. I've not read, for professional reasons and things, but it's a joy to get back into fiction and something that's so artfully written. So it may not be to everyone's taste, but I'm about halfway through and I'm loving it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Amir.
So I'm actually listening to a book that I've read before again, simply because I want to get more into audiobooks, because I see my mind drifts off after a few seconds. And it's a book, Insight by Tasha Eurich. It's about the importance of self-awareness and the 7 different dimensions of self-awareness. Now, I've read it once, I think a year ago, and then during the last 2 months, I'm trying to listen to it again and again, just because I don't retain information that easily. So, and it's an amazing book. I can just recommend it to anyone.
Love it. So for our listeners, perhaps who might have some time on their hands, what fiction things might inspire them? And equally, what was the book or something you saw or read and you think you might want to go and have another look at it, just to regain some of the insights, look at some of the thoughts from it with the new lens that you've got. And I think that's great advice for all of us. And I really want to thank you for being so open in the conversation. And I really am looking forward to a co-elevating partnership. Thanks ever so much recently for your newsletter that went out with some of our information and involving us in your world. And we're trying to be a hero to the same person. And how do we do that is by being adaptable in our house, right? So here's to a great next decade for you. And again, it's been a real pleasure to spend some time on the conversation.
Thank you, Ross. Likewise, any single interaction that we had with yourself and Mike has been a real joy and an inspiration. I take every time some nuggets away from it, think about it, and then try to build or research it deeper as well. So thank you.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit aqai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQ-Me assessment. AQAI, transforming the way people, teams and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.